Hey, what's up? Hello. If you are new here, my name is Kayla and you are watching Kayla's Bookish Vibes. Today's video is going to be a reading vlog. We are going to be reading a book that I have been anticipating. If you watched my mid-year book tag, one of the questions in that tag was, what book are you looking forward to for the second half of the year? And my answer was the Davenports, More Than This, which is the second book in the Davenports series. I am looking forward to that book. It releases in November. I'll put the date on the screen. It releases in November. But I was scrolling on Instagram and I saw a bookstagrammer mention that she was going to be reading that book this month. So I thought, let me just mosey on over to NetGalley. And I'm pretty sure I just told you guys that NetGalley is not something that I use any longer because I just don't like to feel pressured to read books when I don't feel like reading them. So as you can imagine, my percentage rate is in the toilet, okay? It's in the bins on NetGalley. So I was like, I'm going to request this book and they're probably going to deny me because I haven't been reviewing these books. But they didn't deny me. I got the book. I got More Than This right here on my Kindle. So I thought, why not do a reading vlog? Okay, we're going to read this book together. I will give you guys my thoughts, my star rating by the end of the video. I won't be doing any spoilers. I'll just tell you more of like how I'm feeling about the book and my thoughts on it, not necessarily what's going on in the book. First though, if you're not familiar, The Davenports by Krystal Marquis came out last year. It's one of my favorite books of 2023. It's foiled, so there may be a glare, but this cover is absolutely stunning. We have Olivia here, or who I'm assuming is Olivia, and then we have the other three ladies that we are following in this book. So we get 4 different points of view. Olivia is the oldest Davenport daughter, and in the first book, she is coming of age to enter society and she's expected to find a husband. However, while trying to find her husband, she also realizes that she's finding her purpose in life, and I think that's one of the things that I really loved about this book. It wasn't just about finding love for these girls, it was also about finding their purpose and how they could go about navigating their purpose and their passions in life during a time period where women aren't really allowed to do so. Now this is taking place in like the early 1900s in America. Helen is Olivia's younger sister, and she realizes that once Olivia finds her husband, which isn't going to be very hard for Olivia because she's beautiful, she's demure, she does everything perfectly, she realizes it's going to be her turn to find a husband, and she's really not into that. She wants to be a mechanic and kind of take over her family's business. So the Davenports are a well-to-do family in Chicago because their father started the Davenport Carriage Company, and Helen wants to take over that company. She's really good with her hands. She works better than most mechanics that works for her dad's company. She has to sneak and do those things because those are not typically a place where ladies should be. But with the help of her older brother John, she is able to learn quite a bit. So for Helen's point of view, we're kind of following her as she kind of wrestles with the expectations of her being a woman in high society versus what it is she really wants to do. I think Helen's point of view is probably one of my favorites. She reminds me a lot of Eloise's character in Bridgerton, if you're familiar with that show. Eloise is just not here for all the high society fluff. She has passions and desires, and she's ambitious about writing and just wanting to be her own woman. She doesn't necessarily want to be tied down by men. She wants to be able to move freely within the world. I feel like the same for Helen. She really reminds me of Eloise's character. She's also very witty and very quick like Eloise's character, and I think Helen's point of view, in my opinion, is the most interesting one. Then we have Ruby. If Helen's is the most interesting, in my opinion, Ruby's is the least interesting. Ruby is a friend of the Davenports, very close friend. They grew up together. She is also part of high society, and she has set her eyes on John Davenport, the son of the Davenport. She's kind of plotting to find her a husband, preferably John Davenport, and that is her point of view. Again, in my opinion, she has the least interesting point of view in the story. And then the last character is also one of my favorite characters, is Amy Rose. Amy Rose, I believe, is like the maid to the Davenport. She gets paid for her work, and she's actually grown up with the Davenport. So Helen and Olivia view her as more of a sister and a best friend, but in reality she is their maid. She also does hair, and she makes hair products. So what she's really doing is saving her money because she really wants to open her own business, be an entrepreneur, open her own hair shop in Chicago. Now there's also a love interest for Amy Rose, but I won't be telling you who that is because I just don't want to spoil it. I find her point of view also very interesting. She has experienced a lot of loss in her life, and she's really just fighting through all of the obstacles that have been thrown at her to overcome and reach her dream of becoming an entrepreneur. Now, those are a lot of point of views. I think when I read this book the first time, it didn't really bother me. Also, sorry if you can hear fireworks. These people will be popping these fireworks well into August, I'm sure. It is a lot of POVs to try and keep up with, and I think when I read this book last year, I was just smitten with the characters and with the stories that they were telling, that it was very easy for me to keep up with the POVs. I still love this book. As I'm reading the second book, More Than This, I'm about 10% through this book. I read one POV from each character, and I will say, after reading each POV, I really wish that this book would have remained the same, like exactly the same, like introduce us to the Davenports, introduce us to all the characters. But I think this book would have benefited from being a series in like the way that each character would get their own book. Kind of how JJ McAvoy did this series. I ate this series up, but I really enjoyed that each girl got their own story, their own storyline. Each book had its own plot. It's like some of the things connected in each book, but they all stood on their own. I feel like the Davenports could have benefited from doing something very similar to that. I understand it's probably like a time crunch because I know this has been adapted into a television series, which I cannot wait to watch. I really hope they do this book series justice. So yeah, those are my thoughts. That's pretty much all I can share with you right now. I'm going to continue reading, and I'll let you guys know or give you guys like an update maybe tomorrow so that I can get, you know, a good little chunk of this book read tonight. Probably not morning for you, but it is morning for me. We stayed up pretty late reading. We got about 30% through the book, and I have some thoughts. Part of me is wondering, should I have just waited until the book releases in November? But I was just so like pressed to read this book. When you get an ARC or an advanced reader copy, sometimes things can be incomplete. Sometimes certain things will be like in the final copy of the book, they may have edited some of these things out, and that's just kind of the name of the game. When you get an ARC, it's not the final product. I will say a lot of the ARCs that I have received and read ended up being the final product, and I'm wondering what's the case with this book. Like, are there going to be changes made to this book before it is released in November, or is this the final product? I'm hoping that it's not the final product. There will be changes made. I'm going to give my real honest thought. Maybe, you know, highly doubt it, but maybe someone will see this video and take into consideration some of the changes that need to be made. I just want this book to be the absolute best that it can possibly be, right? And I have some thoughts. There are certain scenes that I have come across already, only 30% in the book, that I feel like just don't need to be there. They don't move the plot along whatsoever. They don't add to the story. They don't add to the characters. They don't make you like the characters more. Literally, if you deleted these scenes, it would not change the story one bit. Granted, I know this book is going to be a television series, and maybe those scenes are there with the television show in mind, because I think visually it could be very appealing, but like just reading it, it just doesn't help the story at all, and it kind of messes up the flow of things. Obviously, we're getting different points of view, and I feel like each point of view is its own story. Like, each girl has something different going on, something different that they're dealing with. And I think I've already mentioned that it really could have benefited from each girl having her own book. The first Davenport book, I feel like the first Davenport book did a better job at the stories kind of being cohesive. Like, even though each girl had something different going on, there was something that still tied them together and held them together. I feel like we're missing that with this book. There are parts where like other characters show up in different points of view. So like Olivia and Helen are sisters, and there are times where they appear in each other's point of view, but it still just feels like separate stories that could have been told in separate books. Also, considering, sorry, I had coffee this morning but no food. So I'm like, I need to sit still, but I can't. Olivia's point of view is very preachy. Like, I can't think of any other word to describe it, but it's very preachy and almost info dumpy. For me, that's fine, because listen, babe, I love history, especially when it comes to Black history. There's not too much that you could tell me. The age range that this book is intended for reads this book, these are easily going to be the parts where they zone out. Like, they are going to check out at these points of the book. I feel like there is a way that you can present this information that is seamless, and maybe you don't have to like dump it all in one scene in order to keep the reader's attention. Listen, some of the things I was reading at 13, okay, but it's just also not enjoyable to read a lot of info dumpy stuff in historical fiction. Now those are like, I guess, my negatives, the negative things that I'm taking away. Now onto the positive, because I am enjoying this book. Even though it doesn't sound like it, I am enjoying it. I think I'm just reading this book with a more critical eye than I typically tend to read books. Helen's point of view though, I'm loving. I am loving Helen and Amy Rose. Amy Rose, I'm loving the storyline of Amy Rose's point of view. I just feel like some things can be removed out of her point of view, and some things need to be fleshed out more of her point of view. I feel like I think I just love Helen's character. I love her wit and her like how quick she is and how fearless she is. I'm loving where her storyline is going, and I think Helen, out of all of the characters, I really would have wanted to see Helen get her own book, because I think it just would have been perfect. Honestly, all these girls could have gotten their own book, but I think I've said that enough during this video. So get nice and cozy, continue reading this book, and I will give you guys updates and thoughts and opinions as we go, I guess. Come on. Lulu, it's just thunder, dear. Relax. It's just thunder. Lights just flickered. Oh. Boys. Guys, guess what? I have made the executive decision to soft DNF The Davenports More Than This by Krystal Marquis. And I know you're probably thinking, what? Yes, I'm 50% through, and I'm realizing that I am tainting my reading experience because I am reading a book that is not complete and it's not in its final form. And in reality, I should just be patient and wait for this book to be released, because a lot of the problems that I'm having with this book, I feel like will be fixed by the time the book is fully released. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. I still really feel like the pacing and flow of this book is so choppy, and at times it's really hard to follow. I'm hoping that it's just because the copy I got is not complete, it's not finished, you know? There are parts where, in like a typical book that's formatted, sometimes you get indentions. Let me see if I can pull up an example so that you guys know what I'm talking about. Perfect. Actually, Okay, sometimes you get like these indentions in your book so that you know you have now switched to a different, either like you're still with the same character, maybe it's just like hours later, a day later, a week later, or you may just be in a different scene completely, but you get like a large indention. So you see you have this scene and then there's like a indention here and then we move on. We're not getting that in the arc. So like when we get to a different scene, or like the scenery has changed, or even the person that they're talking to has changed, it's kind of confusing because you don't know. You think you're still in the previous scene. And I'm a visual reader. Like when I'm reading, I can see I feel like I'm watching a movie in my head. So when that happens in the book, it's just kind of jarring, and I'm finding myself having to go back and reread to try and figure out what's happening. And I realize it's because the format in the arc hasn't been corrected. So it's a no for me on that. Also, there are just some parts in the book that I feel like can either be cut out that aren't needed at all, or could just flow better. Like the pacing and the flow of the book just feels unfinished. And I really enjoy this series. I don't want to read the unfinished version of the book. And I know you're probably thinking, well, you requested the arc where it literally says it's an unfinished book, and I did. You were absolutely correct. But this is my first time reading an arc that actually feels like very raw and still needs a lot of editing. Not that I've read a lot of arcs in general, but the ones that I have read have been finished, or at least very close to the finished product, and didn't need as much editing as I feel like this one could still use. I'm hoping that they correct a lot of these things. I am still excited though for the release of this book because I just love the Davenports in general. Like what the series stands for and what it's showing, I just genuinely like truly appreciate. Showing a black multiple black affluent families in the 1920s who are finding their way, who are blazing their own trails. It's refreshing because as someone who reads a lot of historical fiction, you don't get a lot of that. I love seeing that in the Davenport series. So I think I'm definitely still going to check out the second book. And I can't wait to watch the television show that's going to be adapted. I really, really hope that they do that well. Like it's a story that needs to be seen, that needs to be showed. It's kind of bittersweet. I wish I just would have waited. That's my bad. Lesson learned, okay? I'm going to go ahead and end the vlog here so that I can edit it and hopefully have it up for you guys by tomorrow. Thank you so much if you made it to the end of today's video, even though this was a flop. I really appreciate you sticking around to the very end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.